What's the single fastest way to shut down a restaurant? Think about it for a second. It's actually not a terrible online review, and it's definitely not a slow weekend. It is the invisible enemy, cross-contamination and foodborne illnesses. These microscopic threats are massive, high-stakes hazards that can absolutely ruin a thriving establishment overnight.
Welcome to this explainer. I'm super excited to have you here because today we're taking those dense, complicated public health codes and transforming them into clear, actionable, and visual safety systems for your kitchen. We are going to turn compliance from a massive headache into a streamlined, highly effective routine.
Okay, let's quickly run through our roadmap for today. We'll start with Section 1, the 3 food hazards. Then Section 2, stopping cross-contamination threats. Section 3, color-coding defenses. Section 4, master cleaning schedules. And we'll wrap up with Section 5, the 4-step sanitization method.
Let's dive right in. Section 1, the 3 food hazards, the invisible enemies in your kitchen.
Because, to properly fight an enemy, we first need to define exactly what it is we're up against. The official guidelines define a food hazard as any biological, chemical, or physical agent in food that has the potential to cause an adverse health effect. Now, I really want to emphasize something crucial here. These contaminants, they don't just magically appear right before serving. They can invade at literally any stage, from agricultural farm prep and transport all the way down to the final plating in your kitchen.
We basically organize these threats into the big 3. First up, physical hazards. These are foreign objects introduced by faulty equipment, pests, or even your staff. Think glass, hair, jewelry, or even tiny stones from the farm. Second, we have biological hazards. These are your pathogens, mold, and foodborne viruses, which love to sneak in through common vectors like raw shellfish and salads. And third, chemical hazards. This covers dangerous stuff like pesticide residue left on fresh produce, or industrial cleaning compounds that accidentally make contact with food surfaces.
Now, active defense against those biological hazards specifically requires very strict temperature control. You have to actively monitor food to ensure it stays entirely out of the danger zone, which sits right between 5 and 65 degrees Celsius. If your food hangs out in that zone for too long, those biological villains are going to multiply like crazy.
Moving on to Section 2, stopping cross-contamination threats, when systems fail.
Let's shift gears to the core problem here. What exactly happens when these invisible hazards hitch a ride on our tools, our hands, or our equipment and jump from one item to another? The stakes here are literally life and death. I want you to understand that when we're dealing with allergens and micro-threats, even a microscopic trace of an allergen transferred during service can cost a life. It can trigger a fatal reaction. If a pair of tongs touches a peanut dish and is then used for a seemingly safe salad, that is a catastrophic system failure.
So the takeaway here is strictly adhering to the Ministry of Public Health's discard rule. It clearly dictates that if any part of a food item shows signs of biological contamination, the entire food item is compromised and the whole unit must be thrown away. Think about a loaf of bread, right? If you see mold growing on just one slice, you can't just cut that piece away and serve the rest. No way. The invisible roots of that mold have already contaminated the entire batch. Contamination is ruthless, and your disposal protocols have to be equally ruthless.
All right, Section 3, color-coding defenses, visual superpowers for kitchen staff.
I really don't want you to view color coding as just another boring regulatory chore. Color coding is a visual system used strictly to prevent cross-contamination between different types of food and different areas of a facility. The guidelines actually mandate color coding in 2 primary areas. The first is kitchen utensils. You must use different colored chopping boards and knives for different food categories. This ensures tools used for raw meat, like in butchery, are never accidentally used for ready-to-eat foods like salads or cooked meat.
The second primary area for this is cleaning equipment. Tools like mops, cloths, and brushes must be dedicated exclusively to specific zones. For example, you are required to use a specific color, like red, for high-risk restroom areas, and a completely different color, like blue, for the dining area floors. This system prevents a red bathroom mop from ever accidentally touching a blue dining room floor where your guests are eating. It just makes safety instantly visible to every single staff member.
Which brings us to Section 4, master cleaning schedules, structuring the chaos.
So visual cues like red mops and blue brushes are fantastic, but they absolutely must be backed up by a permanent, documented routine. To truly satisfy municipal inspectors, you have to organize the natural chaos of a commercial kitchen, and you do this by deploying a Master Cleaning Schedule, or MCS. A compliance schedule has to explicitly detail 4 critical elements. First, what must be cleaned, meaning specific zones, heavy equipment, grease traps. Second, who is responsible. Third, how it must be cleaned, listing the exact standard operating procedures and the specific chemical brands. And finally, how often, whether that's hourly, at the end of a shift, or weekly. Every single step must be explicitly detailed so you can train your staff out of those lazy, surface-only wiping habits.
But look, documentation only works if there is true accountability. Keep this regulatory quote in the back of your mind. Blank lines on an auditing sheet constitute an automatic compliance failure. The person in charge, the PIC, has to physically verify the cleaning process and sign off at the end of every single shift. If an inspector walks in and sees missing signatures, you fail. It really is that simple.
And finally, Section 5, the 4-step sanitization method, the mandatory cleaning hierarchy.
It's one thing to have a schedule, right? But it's another to know exactly how food contact surfaces must be handled to completely eradicate dangerous biofilms and pathogens. You can't just make a counter look clean. You have to follow the strictly mandated 4 steps. Step 1, wash. You must physically remove debris using a detergent. Step 2, rinse. Clear that detergent away completely with clean water. Step 3, sanitize. Apply your approved food-grade chemical to actually kill the microorganisms. And step 4, air dry. This is so critical. You have to let it air dry because wiping it down with a towel just introduces the risk of cross-contamination right back onto your freshly cleaned surface.
And speaking of Step 3, sanitization is definitely not a guessing game. Establishments must actively use chemical test strips to hit exact regulatory benchmarks. If you're using quaternary ammonia, or QUAT, your solution has to measure exactly 200 parts per million. If you rely on chlorine-based solutions, they have to register strictly between 50 and 100 parts per million. If it's too weak, pathogens survive. But if it's too strong, you've just created a chemical hazard right on your prep table.
So as we wrap up this explainer today, I want to leave you with a really vital question to think about. Are your kitchen's visual defenses and cleaning schedules truly foolproof, or are you leaving blank spaces for the invisible enemy? I highly encourage you to go back to your facility, audit your color coding, check your master cleaning schedules, and ensure your team is executing every single step to protect both your guests and your business. Stay vigilant, keep organizing, and most importantly, stay safe out there.